Hello. Hi. Ooh, happy Saturday. Hello, hello. Let me just make sure this is going live. I thought I had my volume turned off there. No, it's not. Now it's turned off. That's a little bit better. Hi. You know what? I did not expect to get a little bit nervous sharing my story that I feel like I have shared in so many ways in times to some close people in my circle, right? And I've alluded to and have spoken about a lot of pieces of it. But in my quest to create this experience, in my mission, that is truly to allow women, and basically, I want to create a society. I want to create a society where women don't hold on to this shame and this guilt because we find ourselves in situations that we had some personal responsibility for ending up in, right? Of course, like we are living life, we are creating life through us and our choices. But when we do that, and I'm going to go back a little bit to Debbie's talk yesterday, like some of us end up with this ultra crusade of like this personal accountability and responsibility in our lives, which I think when you balance that, it can be a really, really helpful tool in life, right? Understanding personal accountability and responsibility. But when you swing so far to the pendulum of always finding a way to take responsibility and onus for everything that goes on, those walls just completely encompass you. They wrap you up and they close you the fuck off. And if you stay closed the fuck off, when you're going through moments that you have to heal, when you're going through the moments that have broken you, that crushed you, into those little pieces of glass shards or those little ashes, it's going to take you so much longer to put the pieces back together the way that you want to because you hold on to the shame and the guilt because of that, because of that extreme I just the word came to me yesterday, crusade of personal accountability. And so my promise to you is I'm going to share a lot of shit today. Things that I really buried back deep and I haven't revisited because I have had this really, really incredible talent my entire life of being able to compartmentalize. And after I've gone through it, done. Like I just lock it away and tuck it away in a place that like I can't even remember a lot of the details often. And I say that because there are those of us that are these personal responsibility crusaders, these high achieving women, these women who um, define our worth and our value based on the things that we've accomplished and the things that we've done. And so when we do that, number one, we don't associate with the word healing. We don't associate with being hurt or broken. But I can promise if you don't take a proactive, this is like for that alpha woman, right? Like this, if you are the alpha woman, if you've lived the bulk of your life in your masculine energy, I can assure you, if you don't take time to go back and purposely scratch that crustiness off the wound, that you didn't deal with the wound underneath and it started to to scar over, you don't scratch the surface of that, it's going to grow deep within your body and it's going to start to take hold and it's going to show up in a place and a time that you are not fucking ready for having to deal with it. Yes, Debbie, come in for the replay later. Thanks for popping me on and sending me some love this morning. If you don't go back and intentionally and consciously say, I never, like I dealt with it and I seem to be totally fine. But is there any point in my life that these events might be affecting me, right? Like maybe I hit a glass ceiling with my income. Maybe in my business, I can't seem to get past 10K months, 30K months. Maybe in my career, I can't get to the level of the promotion that I want to. And you can't think of any real, hi, Luna, baby girl. I know you can't, you want to hear them. Well, but this is my stage today. I love them. I love them. And I don't want you to scratch my dress with your nails. Um, if you've got to realize like there are going to come points in your life where you're going to hit ceilings, you're going to hit blocks. And so the only way to figure out like what is blocking you, what is kind of keeping you stuck is to go back and say, is there any way I can do some healing around some things that I don't think that I need to heal? So this story of some real raw, like, again, not everything that I would say I am necessarily proud of, but I don't feel that shame and that guilt today from. I'm going to share because there are women who have gone through those circumstances and they are sitting there ruminating in that shame and that guilt and they can't get past, they can't get out of it. And I'm going to share some stories and some things and some decisions that I've made that you might have been on the opposite end of. And I don't want you to feel like I'm justifying my life and my actions. But right, there's always two sides of the story. There's always two sides of the coin. There's always two sides of the story. And I am someone who feels that I can hold that space and I can take it to be out there and shed some light on some topics that are really kind of taboo. So that's the start of it. And I like a little bit of dramatic flair, right? I like to open it up on the eve of being about 12:30 a.m. on October 24th, which would be the wee hours of Wednesday night, Tuesday night into Wednesday, 2018. I'm on the phone with my mom in my office, which is in the front of my house. And through the shears, I had the lights on in my office. And this is really late at night to be on the phone with my mom. And you'll see why later. I see these two police cars driving up, lights on, not flashing, no sirens, two police cars. So I walk outside and I don't go out my front door, which is right there. Don't want to wake up the dogs. For whatever reason, my child is asleep. My almost 6-year-old is upstairs asleep in his own bed, which he never did. Like I'm going to go through the garage. Don't want the dogs to bark. Don't want to wake up Jax. This is never good when two police cars come with lights on, no sirens in the middle of the night. So I walk out the driveway and I walk down the driveway and it's October and it's Buffalo, New York, and it's cold. And I think I'm barefoot, probably in like leggings and a sweatshirt. And they walk up the driveway and they're like, are you, Ms. Mikulski? I'm like, yes. We found your husband. And I laid down there on the floor, on the cold driveway. And I just stared up at the sky. There were a couple stars, lots of clouds. The sky was, I want to say there was a bit of a full moon, or there was enough moon to illuminate. It's 11:11 right now. Enough moon to illuminate the sky because I can remember the color, the blues, the deep, deep darks. And I just said, where? And they said he was in his house. And I said, okay. So now, before I give you the rest of that story, I'm going to take you back to where I grew up. And I grew up in a small, tiny town in Northeast Ohio. I'm a Midwest girl, even though I do call Buffalo my home. Only child. The sun, the moon, and the stars set and rose around me. I was the sun, actually. And I had a really, really normal like childhood. Like my parents loved me. My grandparents lived near me. I was close with like my family. Sunday dinners at grandma's, green beans and ribs and corn on the cob and all the things. And I just always felt like I never fit in. I didn't feel like I belonged in that family. It's not that I didn't feel the love. I did feel the love, but I felt I was very, very different. And I remember being a 3-year-old girl. And why the age of 3? We were really sitting up close in front in one of the church pews at the Church of Christ. Very, very basic, tiny, small, like bare bones basic church. And I never, like church, I didn't even feel good. Like it didn't feel yummy to me. And I just remember sitting there going, I know God and what you're telling me about God and all this, like this or that, black or white, like that just doesn't fit well with me. And like these people are real nice to me, like walking in here, but like when I walk outside in life, like nobody's like talking to you and hugging you and shaking your hand. Like, why is this like so bizarre? Didn't feel genuine to me. And I was questioning it from very early on at the age of 3. I was super busy. Like my parents kept me really, really busy. I was really good at academics. Um, but I never like I just was born with like this lack of self-esteem. At that time, we didn't talk about worth. We really just talked about like lack of self-esteem. And my parents were really good at reminding me about that. But their solution to that was to just tell me all the time, all the good things about me, and then also tell me how I needed to proceed to think, to act, to be. And again, this is all from a place of love, right? Their generation and our snapshot in geographical area of the world. And so I was real good at school. They kept me busy. What I was not good at was socially, right? Like I was so painfully shy as a young girl. I was like afraid of my shadow. And there would just always be these instances where I would make a friend and I would like want to tell a secret to. And my friend would always like betray my trust and like go tell whatever I told them, like all the way back to like I remember like being in second and third grade, right? So I'm like, gosh, socially it was weird. And I really wasn't like that cute of a little kid. Like I had awkward hair and all that stuff. By the time we got to high school, like again, there was just this. I wasn't the most popular girl. I wasn't the least popular girl, but I certainly always wanted to be. Like I said, like for whatever reason, like popularity and like belonging was really, really important to me, right? Because probably because I didn't feel like I really belonged like in my family. And so I would try to make these connections and like time and time again, like my trust would be broken. Like they would tell a secret. Or like I remember being in high school and we were boy crazy. I mean, come on, it was the 80s and like the Teen Beat magazine was all over and like I wasn't allowed to like put the posters all over my room like my friends were. I wasn't allowed to do all of those things. We had to keep it classy. Um, and so I remember I think we were freshmen in high school and a friend of mine and we sat down and we made a list of like guys we really thought were hot. Like we were like, okay, like let's rank the guys. You know, come Monday morning, the physical paper of the list goes floating around, and it turned into the list of guys Danielle wants to fuck as a freshman in high school. I'm talking teachers got this. And I knew they got it because they could tell by the way they looked at me. And I'm like, what? First of all, it wasn't a fuck list. Second, it was me and a friend. She made it. Like, so there are again, personal accountability, hyper, responsible. Like, yes, there are things that I kept finding. I'm like, how are these things happening to me? Right. And it does. It boils down to I was trusting the wrong people. But high school is hard. A lot of us have these painful stories about school growing up. But again, they do embed in us and they do have an effect on how we go through life. So I was always a pitcher in high school. I played softball year round. I mean, I was really, really good. My dad was my coach. He helped coach the teams too. I went to softball camp at Ohio State when I was in junior high school, which was really cool. I played travel ball. But I knew I didn't want to go to college and even try to play in college because I wanted to have a social life. I didn't get to go out and do the parties. I didn't get to go to the parties in high school where the kids were drinking. My parents kept me busy on purpose. Like I didn't even get to go. I wanted to go join ski club because I wanted to learn how to try to ski. And they're like, you can't do that because like you have a responsibility to your softball team as the pitcher, and your travel team is relying on you. And so I was just so, so busy all the time. So when it was time to go to college, I wanted nothing to do with responsibility because I wanted to just be a fucking kid. And I wanted to get to learn about myself. And I really wanted to explore like who the fuck I was, aside from the person my parents told me I always was, and the thoughts that they told me I should always have that, again, as the black sheep, I just never felt like, right? Like I just felt like I didn't belong there. So I picked a college that was 4.5 hours away from home, about 4 hours away from home. Nor I lived in Northeast Ohio. I went to school in Southwest Ohio. You really couldn't get any farther being in the state of Ohio. I could have gone to the place that Ken went, which was only an hour from me actually. But that was a private school, and private school wasn't on my list. I wanted to be an accounting major because I didn't like people. At that point, I was like, fuck people. People have betrayed me up and down, sideways, all around. I had actually had a high school boyfriend from the age of, I guess, my sophomore year, partway through my sophomore year through when we graduated. Now, P.S. all of these self-esteem things and this like lack, like this betrayal from my friends, it did kind of drive me to be a little more promiscuous, right? So I was thinking like, oh, I could make these love connections, right? I was looking for love, I was looking for belonging, and I was consciously, purposely allowing like myself to be very, very sexually promiscuous. Again, I never made a list of the guys I wanted to fuck, but long story long, my senior year, and so my boyfriend and I, like, we were so in love, and he came from a good family. Like, his dad was a teacher, his dad was one of the football coaches. He played football too. Like, we were just like the cutest couple. We were voted most likely to get married. And like just like a really good, normal, healthy, like high school relationship. Like 2 years. And all of a sudden I got broken up with like cold turkey, like no explanation, no nothing. And we were going to college together. We had both signed up to go to Wright State. And he and I actually at college orientation met a boyfriend girlfriend from Chardon, which was about 45 minutes from where we grew up. And so the guys were going to room together and the girls were going to room together because we met each other before rather than the lottery. We were wanting to like find someone that we knew to room with. Now, P.S., being an only child, you kind of miss the sharing lesson in life. So just imagine how it was for me to go and suddenly have to share a tiny ass room. So we get to college, we are broken up. This other couple is still together, but we are broken up. And I'm like, I'm still devastated. Like, I was so in love with him. And, I would try to date. And I'm like, I know, like, I really like thought I was going to marry this guy. Like, I was such a hopeless romantic. You know what? I still am a hopeless romantic, honestly. And there's nothing wrong with that. So we get there and I can't get an answer out of him. And none of my friends would tell me like why he broke up with me. Finally, someone did. And this was like a month into school. And he accused me of cheating on him. And I was like, what? No, absolutely not. Like, no, not ever, never. I had never done that. And like my little heart was crushed because of a lie someone told about me that definitively was not true. Now, I'd had many, many flings before him. Too young, whatever. I also got my period when I was 10. Like I was super hormonal. And I was really like crushed by that. So at one point we tried to get back together like for a hot minute, like, and that doesn't work, right? So it's time to grow up and it's time to move on. So I'm in college. I'm 4 hours away. I couldn't handle having a roommate. My parents did get me an apartment off campus, which was like 10 minutes from campus. It was great. So now I had my own place. I had rushed to sorority. I'd felt like I'd met like a really, the good, like the cute academic. We were like the cute academic sorority. That was it. Like good grades, really cute. We weren't the party girls. We weren't the jocks. But yeah, we were the cute, smart girls. And I found myself in the middle of a lot of, I guess, so-called goody two-shoes because now, once I went to college, now when I was on my own, it was really, really important for me to explore myself and really, really important for me to experiment. And at one point, I thought I'd wanted to be a psych major, but I went into accounting because there's no people really. You deal with numbers. Those are black and white things. They can't make fun of you. They can't lie to you, right? They're just numbers. That's it. Here's what you get. What you look at is what you get. You are what you get. You know what I'm trying to say. And so it was also super boring. Meanwhile, I'm learning to party. I'm like enjoying myself. Now, not in the guy realm. I was like, been there, done that with dudes. Like, sure, was I boy crazy? But did I date anybody? No, not really. Did I hook up with people? I didn't. It just, I was really kind of at that point looking for girlfriends. But I kept finding like being very, very like these very polarized like relationships with girls. So I start, no, I lied. I did find a boyfriend. We were It's closer to the end of my freshman year, probably, maybe over the summer. It was over the summer. Summer going into my sophomore year, I met a guy. We were both working at the cooker, and he came back from Ohio State during the summers because he lived in that area and he was working as a server, and I was working as a hostess then or server then. I don't know. And we started dating. Well, he smoked pot, and I was like, oh, I would never do that. Like, I would never inhale anything. Like, I thought cigarette, like, I'm so disgusted by cigarettes. So and then like my little in sorority, she had moved in with me because she was having a hard time at home and she had a lot of siblings. So she was like sleeping on a her mattress, like living in my one bedroom apartment in the living room, and I was living in my room. And so like he and his friends would come over and she'd be there, and like we'd I learned to get high. And I was like, oh, this is a really interesting place, like that my head can go. And I was really excited and happy to explore. Like I've never felt any shame whatsoever about like my drug exploration. Like I found it to open myself up because I was so closed off, right? Like I was so like I'd just been living in this world where I was told who I was, what I was supposed to think, what right and wrong was. There was just no room for Danielle to think on her own. And like this was a way for me to do it. Well, next thing I know, like somebody's bringing around some, ecstasy. And okay, so we try that. And that was a whole nother level of fun, right? And um, as I start to step away from like the girls that I first became really good friends with in the sorority, my first like few friends, those first days of school, they were the goody two shoes that were like, no, we're not doing that. And you're really bad for that. And so as other girls would come in, I would hang out with them because they were more of the party girls. And sorry, I have an itch, like, when you have mascara on and it's like right on your edge of your eyelid. It's super annoying. So I'm in my party phase. I'm having the time of my life. I ended up moving into a two-bedroom apartment with another girlfriend of mine. We each had our own rooms and we ended up having like the party spot. Mushrooms, blowing lines of coke, like again, not actually having relationships with guys, a lot of friendships, right? Like we were just like the hangout house. Like people would come and like I would have like the rolling parties at my house, and then we go like other people would have like different parties at their house, right? So always contained. Nobody was really driving, but I was having the time of my life exploring like who I was and like the feelings and the thoughts that these drugs were allowing my brain to open up to. And I share that because I have also learned now, like in my healing world, like there's this whole world of plant medicine that's actually super, super healing. Um, but I digress. So back to like my whole exploration stage, like in high school, like with the boys, and in college, like with the drugs. And come to find out, which I know now, like this is totally like my sixth line, right? My human design, I'm a 6-2 Manny Gen. So this is totally my sixth line, like front and center in the first 1/3 of your life. If you're a sixth line, you spend a lot of time experimenting. This is how you gather like your experiential knowledge and your wisdom. Like you're born into, as a sixth line, you're born into this life, like with this deep knowledge and this deep wisdom because you have just lived so many lifetimes, and that your soul has all of that wisdom and the knowledge that it comes with. But when you're living your human life here as a six line, the first 30-ish years, the first third of your life, you're experimenting. But I had no idea. I just knew that everybody was looking at me going, girl's fucking crazy and wild, although she's fun, but we're going to talk about her behind her back. I was the girl people love to hang out with, but goddamn did they love to talk about me behind my back. I was also the girl everybody told their secrets to because I never fucking told a word. I never shared a secret. Anybody knew, and I think that's one of the reasons like I attract clients that have like big shit, big, deep, dark things that feel very shameful. And I'm a place and space that they can come to and be like, okay, I know you're not going to judge me. This is what's going on, or this is what has happened. This is something I was involved in. This is what I've done. How do I move past that? Right? Because they're just sitting there like riddled with like the 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 guilt and that shame, right? Because these are decisions they made. And yeah, girls, oh God, girls, Mean Girls. Like I've actually never seen the Mean Girls movie, and I should go back and revisit it. Because I don't fuss with Mean Girls anymore. Like if I feel that if I pick up any sort of like jealousy vibe, mean girl vibe, I'm out. Like I can wish you well, like truly energetically wish you well and be like, P.S., you're not going to have my energy. But with that, I actually read a quote the other day because my whole, like, especially men, coaches, teachers, boyfriends, or interested parties would be like, you're so intimidating. And I was like, wow, I got that in a job interview once. You're very intimidating. And I wish at that point I had the intellect, I had the maturity to come back and be like, there is no such thing as intimidating. You are intimidated, and that is on you. That's not on me. Um, Assertive. I was always described as assertive, which is not really a complimentary term. But anyway, um, so like I'm really getting into like the nitty gritty of my story because all of this plays such an integral part like later in my life into the things that most people and some of you are really going to be able to relate to on one end of the spectrum or the other. So I'm just looking kind of at my notes because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. But yeah, there were these themes where there was this constant like just betrayal, these things that even looking back now, I'm like, I don't really know how that was happening to me, right? Because I, with my lens, still can't say like, oh, I attracted this. I did this. I think it was really just me like that was the purpose here. Like I was here to go through those lessons and just have those things. Like the part that I agreed to play, I think, when I came here to undergo some of these lessons of like this betrayal, right? Because I kept having my trust broken. Baby girl, you want out? I'm gonna let her out. Come on. Go ahead. Got you go. There you go. Go, go. Apparently she didn't think I was as fun today as she usually does. So there's just this constant like theme of betrayal in my life, like very early on. And that's hard for a kid. So again, you move on, like you don't think that there's any healing work. Like I never associated with being broken or like as much as I was interested in psychology, like I was interested in psychology because I love human behavior. Like I really am fascinated with like human behavior and why people do things and why they don't do things. But for me, I didn't resonate with the model of therapy and the model in which psychology as a profession has been treated. That's not to say that I I look down upon or I don't respect individuals in that space. The entire last 6, 8 months that I've been in the School of Healing Mastery, the bulk of the women in there are licensed therapists, clinical counselors, psychologists, right? And I have a really great respect because they've had all this like formal training. All my training has been through experience and then later in life really going out and like searching for it because I'm just really fascinated by that, by human behavior. So we have like this, you know, Danielle's born with like low self-esteem. Danielle has these lessons of constantly like looking to fit into places socially because I didn't feel like I fit in my family. And I continue to have all my trust broken all the time and time again. So I graduate college, don't know what I'm going to do. It took me a little longer, right? Because I was this accounting major. And then I realized I really don't want to go into accounting. I spent 38 and a half hours studying for a tax test. I had spent 3 months on an internship for the state of Ohio, the auditors of the state of Ohio. Talk about really fucking boring. And like, God love if we have any accountants here. I get the Marka, hi. I totally get like the mundane, like peacefulness of numbers. But now knowing who I was like learning to become, like there's no way I could have survived in that space. The only reason I loved it is because my dream when I was little was to have some kind of high-powered career clip-clopping around in a big city with tall buildings around me in some like really expensive suit and heels, like feeling powerful, right? Feeling like I made it, like feeling like this self-made woman. And I wanted to work for one of the big six. So I changed my major because I couldn't cut it in there and think, you know, didn't belong in that space. So I had to take all of my, you know, my upper level marketing classes, which added one extra year to college for me. So all my friends were graduating. I had one full year for, the 400 level classes. And my final class of marketing before I graduated was actually called the Marketing Study Tour. And they were taking us to Alaska to visit businesses and marketing in Alaska. And I was like, yes, please. So I've been to Alaska for college. That was my last. And that's the reason that I didn't graduate until the summer session and didn't even get to walk with people for because I didn't want to come back in the winter. I didn't walk because I didn't get my diploma until August versus June because we had this one class in the summer that was totally worth it. So graduate, I don't know what I want to do with this marketing degree. So I go back into the world of jewelry sales, right? Like I had a wonderful district manager when I worked part-time for jewelry as a freshman and sophomore in college. So I went, she was still there and I was like, Kelly, I don't know what I want to do. I just graduated. Like, do you guys like have a manager training program? Because I love sales. I think I love sales. I love jewelry and I don't just want to be a store associate. So, because I have this degree. So can you like train me? Can you groom me? And she's like, yeah. So I go back to the jewelry store. Um, Within 9 months, I go through like their management training program, which is not too formal. It's just you do well. People like you, they promote you, you fit in. You fit in, they promote you. So I got my third key, then I became assistant manager. And then again, within the 9 month period, I had my own jewelry store and I loved it. Oh my God, I loved it. Fancy, pretty suit wear in a jewelry store, like playing with diamonds. Like, oh my God, I loved it. But I also knew, like having a college degree, I'm not working retail for my entire life. But goddamn, did I find some beautiful jewelry pieces. So we go to my very first managers meeting, and it is down here in Orlando in Florida. And I, again, still socially awkward, um, but so independent. Like when we would be out, and this was like in college too, when we'd be out, like I'm not the girl that's going to let guys buy me drinks and then stand there like because they expect that I'm going to have a conversation with them or I'm going to let them rub up all over me on the dance floor because they bought me a drink. I'm like, no, I'll fucking buy my drink. In fact, I'll buy you a drink just to fucking go away. That's how I was. Like that is my like toxic independent spirit. And we were at the managers meeting. It was me, Wendy, Nicole, and I don't remember who Nicole's roommate was. And Nicole ended up being in her wedding. Um, but she loved, and so did Wendy, loved to put us in places and positions where guys would buy us drinks. And I'm like, oh God, like I just want to kill myself. This is not literally, like it's just terrible. I'd rather like claw my eyes out with a fork. And there was this one guy who was really, really creepy. His name was Rick. And he kept following us around. And Nicole had known him because she had been, and we were all about the same. Those girls were probably about 2 or 3 years older than me. Nicole had been a manager for a year or two. She never went to college because she had her son very young in her teens. And so he kept following us around. She's like, watch out for him. They call him Dutch, but his name's Rick. And I'm like, ugh. And he was just I'm in my 20s. I was like, oh, he's like in his 40s. Like he's so gross. But he wasn't like a hot 40-year-old either. Late 40s, whatever he was. Not hot at all. He was just gross. Like, and he total creepazoid vibe. And he kept following us around. So one night, like we had gone over to, God, it was before they have Disney Springs, or it was like the I think it was right before they have Disney Springs. There might have been a treasure something, or it was right at the beginning of Disney Springs. They shut it all down. It's just for all the Sterling managers, and we're there. And then we take a shuttle back. And I'm like, I'm kind of going back to bed early, but I had a couple beers. I was just like, I was really tired. We had been in meetings all day, and then we went out and had some drinks. So Wendy and I go back to our room. We go to bed, or like we're getting ready to go to bed. And she was kind of laying down, and like the light between the two beds was on, and I was on my bed, and I get this knock at the door. And this is this Rick guy. I was like, what the fuck do you want? He's like, I can't get into my room. I need a place to sleep. And I'm like, oh, you're so gross. Like, no. I'd only been out of college maybe for a year. And I tell you this because I remember like when you're in college, like people crashing at your place is no big deal. You let them crash on your couch, you let them crash, not a big deal. You have this sense of like invincibility because like you're really you have this utopian trust of the world. Um, I was like, this is, I was tired. Like I wanted to go to sleep. I'm like, whatever. I was like, here's the deal. And I don't know why I didn't get into Wendy's bed, but I said, listen, you stay on your side of the bed. You keep your clothes on. You do not get under the covers and you don't fucking touch me. That's it. Those four things. Stay on your side of the bed, stay on top of the covers, keep your clothes on, do not touch me. It was like 2 in the morning and I wake up and he was under the covers and he was behind me, penetrating me or trying to penetrate me. And I'm like, what? And I was so groggy. So I don't know if somebody put something into my drink because it seems strange for me only having a couple beers to have such a hard time kind of waking up. But I was groggy and I'm like, get the fuck out. And I'm like, Wendy, Wendy. And so we called my manager and blah, 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 and filed a police report. Didn't fly home. That was the day we were supposed to fly home. Didn't fly home that day. Kelly did not. That's my manager. She didn't fly home. It was her son's birthday. She's like, whatever. He's so young. We can tell him his birthday is the next day and he's not going to know the difference. And I lied to my parents saying like, oh, I just had an asthma attack. I'm flying home tomorrow. They kind of thought something was up, but I wasn't ready to tell them. So I filed a case against him and that was that. So I was pretty shaken up, like really, like when you have this physical sensation of like your body is just like the adrenaline doesn't stop running through your body and you feel like that for weeks. That's how I felt. And when you go back to like this guilt and shame, I didn't feel any guilt. It was weird. I didn't feel responsible for this. I knew because I knew that I told him these four things. I also knew that coming from this place of like trust, I knew why it happened because I trusted the universe and I trust, right? There's trust the wrong people. But at the same time, I didn't feel like, no, I told you not to, and you did that, and that is on you. And now you got to sit with it because I fucking went to the police. Not that that was fun. And it's like, do you sue your company? Do you want to go up against the world's largest retailer of jewelry in the like, no, probably not. That doesn't feel fun. Do I have a job to go back to? Do I want to go back to that job? Long story long, I ended up moving back home with my parents. I left that job. And it was the only time I ever moved back in with my parents after college. Like once I left at 17, I've never gone back. I think I was at their house for about 13, 14 months after this had happened because when I graduated college, my store that I ran was right in the Dayton area and I never moved. So the only way I was like on leave and I think I tried to get back. I think I tried to go back to work. They were being very supportive because I think they were probably afraid that I was going to sue them. And the legal process takes fucking forever to file a victim report and file this sexual assault report, and then again, like I know the whole there's an acronym, SART team, I think, sexual assault response team. Yeah, I had to go through the whole SART thing. And I actually ended up reading this book. It's a really, really incredible book. It's called Say My Name. This woman was brutally raped um on the campus of, I think, was it USC out in California? I forget it, but it's a really long, I listened to it and she did a beautiful job. And I'm like, God, I can relate so much to everything she went through. But she was physically and violently raped. And I kept saying, like, I am so grateful. This is so weird. The thing that I held on to in this moment was like, I'm so grateful that this wasn't violent. I had this fear. Somehow I saw it. Now I remember this. Somehow when I was a little girl, I saw the movie The Accused. Too young to have seen it, probably had a TV in my room, probably flipped on HBO late at night, and I saw the scene where Jodie Foster was raped. I think it's on a pinball machine by all these guys in the movie. And like I remember just being so fearful. Like that was like my greatest fear, to have my body violated. And so when I got through this moment and this experience, I was like, I am just so grateful that this wasn't violent. I am so grateful that this wasn't physically so painful that like I have a physical painful reminder. I have an emotional painful reminder that I got to figure out how to deal with. And I got to like stop my heart from wanting to beat right the fuck out of my chest 24/7. But I'm grateful my body didn't feel so obliterated. And again, Claire, like I'm right, like that's my difference for what I went through. And I was just able to find that gratitude. But I've had so many other moments in my life that like if you just say like your rape wasn't the biggest thing, like that just tells you I've got a lot more things that I've been through. Um, and so I moved back home with my parents for a while. Nothing's going on with the court case. I went back to the jewelry store for a bit, just at a store closer to my, up there. And I was like, how do I get out of the retail space? I wanted to move into the pharmaceutical world. And my mom helped me get it. Like she's somebody she worked with had a job at Cintas. So I like got in Cintas, but I was only there for like 6 months and I finally moved into pharma. Well, they gave me the option of do I want to go to Buffalo or Erie, Pennsylvania? Buffalo is a bigger area. So when I got my job, I moved to Buffalo. 2005. Moved to Buffalo in 2005. And then I had to spend a month in training in New York. So I go move myself into an apartment, and I leave for a month to go to New York. And that was in October. And come April, the next year, 2006, April 1st, um, I'm driving around Buffalo looking for a place to watch. I think I wanted to watch the Masters. And I was just trying to explore, right? And so I go to this place. It's a wing place. Go up to the bar, grab a beer, just want to watch the Masters. Like, I don't know anybody in this town. And there's these two guys next to me. And we just started hanging out. We did an Irish car bomb. And this was like shortly after my DUI. I did get a DUI in Buffalo because one day I was driving home from having some drinks and I was about 3 miles from my house and I was going over the speed limit. I was not driving erratically. I was going over the speed limit by like 9 miles an hour. And what I didn't know is like this one particular cop patrols that, like just, and that is this whole world is like he tries to give out DUIs. And I think I blew like a .08, like really low. And I got a DUI. It sucked. It absolutely sucked. I tell you that because right after that is when I met Sean, my ex-husband, on April Fool's Day at that wing joint. So I'm dating him or whatever, and he ended up going to my court hearing with me, and he paid my DUI. What do you call it? Fine. I had to have a blower in my car. I called my boss right away, actually, when it happened. And I was like, I just got this pharmaceutical job. I don't know what to do. Or am I going to get fired? And I was just totally like honest about it. And they let me keep my job. They just put a blower in my car. Thank you, God, right? Um, I was so pissed at the cop because I had my two puppies, dogs at the house, and he wouldn't let me go in and let them out before he hauled my ass off to jail and made me sleep in jail overnight. That wasn't fun. Um, So I meet him on April Fool's Day. Joke's on me. And now like I'm feeling in this like shameful place, like shameful because I got this DUI. Grateful I had my job, shameful I got a DUI. And he goes to court with me, pays that bail, and like we just have like this really quick whirlwind romance. Like I'm madly in love with him. Well, clearly, like I was very vulnerable. I was in a really vulnerable place at that time. And within, my parents met him right away when they came up to visit. He's like, yeah, bring your parents. I don't care. He was recently divorced or just about to be finally divorced. And I remember him telling me like his ex-wife cheated on him. And I'm like, oh, poor thing, oh. And he seemed like a catch. I think he was 35. I was 27, something like that, 34, 26. And we got engaged after 4 months. We got married 1 year later. Meanwhile, I've got this trial that I'm going to have to participate as a witness for my rape in Florida. I'm in New York, but I got to come down to Orlando. Every time the 407 area code comes up on my phone, even to this day, I'm like, "Zzz, zzz." And so, um, yeah, we are planning this wedding. So there were some red flags, like right off the bat, right? I always felt like I didn't want to be in a relationship with or didn't want to be with somebody who didn't come from like a solid, stable background, meaning I didn't want someone who had been a product of divorce because I thought that world would be way too different from me and my family and what I knew and what I would be comfortable with. And he was this guy who had emancipated himself from the age of 15. Okay, so remember, I meet him right after my DUI. He pays for all of my court costs and my fines. Tells me how he had been cheated on, tells me that he emancipated himself at the age of 15 and came back, left his parents in Texas and came back to live in New York with friends so he could finish college and then put himself through private college. And he was a successful pharmaceutical rep. Well, he was actually a medical rep. So similar work, been at it longer, made really good money, the same industry. So that was really alluring to me. But I'm like, wow, what an independent man. Like, and he seems to want the same things in a family. But we were planning the wedding. And like, like me being this hopeless romantic, like I want all the things. I want, I'm thinking about gift bags and like, having people come up because Buffalo's only 2 hours from Ohio. So I want all my family there. And like I like all the little tiny details that are, I'm not a detail, like I'm a big picture person and I don't know how to make the details happen. But like he was like, no, I don't like that, or I don't like that, and I don't like that. And like he wanted an input into this wedding in things that, yes, men and women, they husband and wives, they need to plan their wedding together, but he was really intrusive on his demands in things that would just affect like me and my side. And I'm like, I don't like this. This doesn't seem weird. And like my mom was getting like a really weird vibe. And we were fighting to the point, we had already planned our honeymoon in Maui. That was done and planned, and we were fighting to the point that we decided to cancel the wedding and elope. We would take my parents. We knew his wouldn't go. He offered it up to his mom. They were on speaking terms. But I also knew like my grandparents, they would never fly and they wouldn't be able to go. And my grandparents and I were really, really close. And this should have been a red flag for me because it was really important for me to have my grandparents at that wedding. But we were fighting to the point that he convinced me it would be a good idea to just get married in Hawaii and we'll be there longer. We'll spend 2 weeks there instead of just a week for the honeymoon. And it was just us and my parents. So hang on a second. Another red flag. We're planning the wedding. And again, I'm new into the pharmaceutical industry and he's been in the medical industry. And I'm at a meeting, right? We have these meetings a couple times a year where you're gone 2 to 4 nights and you have meetings all day and then you're expected to go out. Kind of similar to the same thing in the jewelry, like where I was with the jewelry store, but it was a different vibe. It was definitely a different culture. And so we would go down to the hotel lobby bar, we'd have some drinks. You're supposed to network and mingle with these people. Your job is to show up. Your job is not to have to drink. Like that is your choice if you want to drink. Nobody forces you to do that. But you are supposed to show up and network. And I had a couple drinks and he was screaming at me on the phone while I'm at a work meeting because he did not want me down at the bar in the hotel lobby with people from work. He wanted me in my room. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. And I'm just like, man, these red flags keep popping up, right? So like the family history, the don't be drinking at the bar at your work meeting when you're supposed to be networking with people. Don't be look, don't think about that thing for your wedding or for your bridal party or the party favors, the table favors, like that's not acceptable. Let's just go elope. Don't, and now none of my family can be there. And so I should have run. He was always on and off with his brother and sister-in-law who had four kids. So like he was in their life and out of their life, in his mom's life and out of his mom's life. His dad was dead. Actually, no, we found out his dad was alive when his mom had said his whole life that his dad had died. And I'm like, that's weird. We met his dad. And his mom was like this really like toxic person. So we get married. We're in Hawaii that morning because I stayed at, with him and my parents were at a different hotel. My dad came, we were getting married at my parents' hotel. My dad came to pick me up and I was like, hey, come to the hotel and get my bag. I'm going for a run. You can pick me up on the road. Metaphorically, I was going for a run to run the fuck away. Like that's what was really happening. I was so like, there was something I could tell that I should probably not be doing this. But instead of actually saying I'm not going to do this, I just went for a run. And, we lived a life, we were dinks, dual income, no kids. Like we lived a great life. We had really great money. We could pick up and travel whenever we wanted. We didn't really fight a lot, but then we would because he would be paranoid. We would be out to dinner or we'd have dinner at the bar and like a really nice restaurant. And he's like, why is that guy looking at you? And I'm like, I don't know. Ask him. I'm why is that guy looking at you? And like he would watch me when I'd get up and go to the bathroom and come back. And I'm like, maybe he just wants to protect me. He just must love me a whole lot. But like it was starting to like seep in and I'm going, it's really paranoid. Like, what the fuck? And I was starting to push back. And, you know, sexually, our sex life was what felt like very unhealthy. He only wanted me a certain way. He watched so much porn. He wanted me to do the things that he saw on video, to dress the way he saw on video. And I know how to dress in a way that makes me feel confident and comfortable and sexy. And it was none of the things that he wanted. And so we had this constant butting of heads. And I was constantly being pushed to do the things sexually that I was not comfortable with. And it really did feel like emotional abuse. It really did feel, it just didn't feel good. And I got to the point where like I would just have sex with my husband and I'd be like, just lay there and be like, when's it going to be over with? And I would try to like disassociate. Didn't think I wanted to have kids. Like for whatever, like maybe this was my body and God protecting me from saying like, you're not gonna have kids with this guy, right? So we're getting close to, we're around the 2011 time period. I'm not comfortable. He's doing things, he's wanting to video things and put it online on these certain sites. And my face wasn't in it, but he did. So like my body in sexual ways being penetrated is on video online without my head anonymously, but still, that doesn't feel good. So finally, around 2011, I kind of had this guttural, I need to have a baby. Like I just did. It wasn't to save a marriage. I just knew like suddenly it's time I want a child. Like I want to bring a child into this world. I want to be a mom. And I'd been doing really, really well in my career, but when I got pregnant, my grandma had recently died, which sucked. I was really like, it still sucks today that she never got to meet Jax. I lost a baby first, very early on. So again, I'm 1 in 4, but that trauma that didn't really take hold. But as I was pregnant, I was at the top of my career. I had won President's Club. I was the #1 rep in the entire country. That's a huge, huge honor. And this was at a second company. I changed companies. And it was very early on in my time at that particular company. I won Rookie of the Year. I was the #1 rep of the year. I was on top of my game. And I find out on that President's Club that I was pregnant. And while I'm super excited that I'm pregnant, I really was like, and I loved being pregnant. P.S. I would have had anybody's baby. I would still consider having somebody's baby as long as they promise to take it back and raise it. But I loved to be pregnant. Um, I literally was like, my career's over. Not over, but like I'm not going to be a manager anytime soon. And I would have been like kind of like next in line to take a manager role, which is what I wanted. I didn't just want to be a rep. I wanted that responsibility. I wanted to develop people. I was really good at developing people. So as I'm pregnant, he just starts drinking more and more. Now, this wedge that he's been trying to drive between me and my family, like I can really see it. And we're on a boat trip. Like we were boaters and we took our boat from Buffalo over to Canada and then over to Erie, Pennsylvania. And then my parents and some other family came to visit us that time. But we slept on our boat for like a week. And I was pregnant and he would drink so much. I just remember listening to him pee so forcefully and so loudly. There was nothing this man could do that I was not repulsed by. Nothing. I didn't like the way his skin smelled. I didn't like the sound of him peeing. I didn't like how many beers he would drink. I didn't like how much whiskey he drank after he drank the beers. I didn't I didn't like him at all anymore. And here I am pregnant. Happy, blissfully pregnant, dreaming about, like Jody was talking about, like as soon as we're pregnant, like we just start having all of these hopes and dreams. Like we have no idea who we're gonna get, right? Like no idea who this little thing is gonna be when it comes out. Not a clue. But just dreaming and dreaming of the nursery and dreaming of the things and writing in the little diaries. And I remember shortly after we got married, my phone rang from an ex-boyfriend, and he saw that I had a 2-minute conversation with him. And I got my ass reamed up and down because my phone rang from an ex-boyfriend and I didn't tell him. I was married. It was a 2-minute conversation. This wasn't a series of conversations because clearly I know he was looking in my phone. I also found out later that he had gone through an online diary of mine. I was keeping like an online journal, like through an app on my phone. He went through that. So here I am in a marriage, feeling that he is so paranoid. I'm feeling violated both sexually. I'm emotionally being told that I'm causing all this attention to come to me. And he's invading my privacy, violating my privacy. And now here I am carrying his baby, and he's drinking all the time, gone out of the bars like 4 or 5 hours during the day, leaving me at home. Tells me, and I'm like, why? I'm always home alone. Like, this is our baby. He's like, well, I lost my drinking buddy. I gotta go find other people to hang out with. And I'm like, you lost your drinking buddy because I'm carrying our baby. Like, fuck off. So by the time we had Jax in the hospital, I was done. I was mentally done. I wasn't thinking about divorce, but I just knew I was done. Like I had someone else to care about and think about, and I was so done with him. Um, God, we're only to this part. I told you I was going to tell you everything. I'm telling you everything because there's so many people that can relate to parts of this story. Like I said, I'm sharing my story. God, I'm gonna itch. It's easier when my nails are super sharp to itch. They're dull. Um, I do this because in my hologenetic profile, I have the gene key, the 64th gene key, in which the city is illumination. I want to illuminate for people that no matter what it is you go through, you can come back from, that no matter what it is you experience, it's not your fault to a point, right? The 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 abuse, the betrayal. I want you to know like that while you're sitting there not sharing and you're feeling that shame or that guilt, that it can go away. So that's why I'm sharing so many details. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be this transparent. Hold on, I'm not saying you have to air all of your dirty laundry, but I'm doing it because I can handle it. I'm doing it because I want to live in a society, like I said, where women are not shamed by their stories and they can find a circle, they can find a group of women that they feel comfortable and confident to share with them so that they can then lift up another woman. So I had the baby that made you never want to have another baby. He did not sleep for 2.5 years. He screamed bloody murder for 8 months, unless he was on a boob. So I was nursing him. He was not gaining weight. Um, you cannot come in here. I'm on video. Um, I was nursing him. He was not gaining weight. And um, sorry, making sure Jax goes downstairs. You can hear him through the door. I kept being drugged to different pediatricians, and they're like, you need to give him formula. And I'm like, no, you need to give him formula. He's not gaining weight. Like, he's okay. I can tell. Like, all of his cues are fine. He doesn't have enough fat on him. We're going to label him failure to thrive. And I just said no. For whatever reason, I am Mother Earth. Thousands of years ago, we didn't have formula, and I'm going to be able to provide whatever my baby needs. I know my instincts are going to provide whatever my baby needs. You're here for his sick care. He is not sick, so I am not interested in what you have to say. I just had that like center of grounding about myself. And maybe you would have made the choice to provide formula, and that's okay. For me, it just was not going to be an option. I actually went the other route and I found other women who were donating breast milk, and I was happy to supplement with their breast milk because I didn't make enough. Hey, Bailey. So I have this baby that these doctors are trying to label failure to thrive. I changed pediatricians like 4 or 5 times. I have this husband at home who is so drunk all the time. He's passed out in the basement because he doesn't know how to handle a screaming, crying infant. And if I have Jax off of my boob for any period of time, like he slept with my boob in his mouth, he just needed me. Now, again, is there any wonder that he came into this world because into a world where his parents did not get along, his parents did not like each other, where his mom, spent her pregnancy under all of this stress? Of course, it's no surprise. So, sorry, I'm trying to, my cute little moon. I want to make sure my cute little moon goes in here in the video. Um, yeah, he didn't sleep. His nervous system was fucked from the beginning. And I harbor a lot of guilt about that. Like, I really do. His inability to self-soothe, his misery. We tried maybe he's got acid reflux. No, his nervous system was fucked. And I was sleep deprived because I had to sleep with him in my bed attached to me or he would not stop screaming. There was one day where I went 40 minutes. I was trying to drive to Ohio. It's a 2-hour drive. He screamed for 40 minutes. There was no stopping it. I pulled over on the side of Route 90 on the highway, called my mom, and I said, I'm just going to sit here in the back of the car with my baby, and you and grandpa are going to have to drive up and meet me. And then somebody can drive one of our cars and the other person I'll ride with because I have to sit in the back and no, he's not going to be in a car seat. He's going to be on my boob because I can't take it anymore. He won't stop. Um, and so Jax is 3 months old. I'm rocking him in his nursery. Sean was super drunk, ranting about something. He can't handle Jax. He can't help at all. And he locked himself in the very next room, the guest room, with a loaded shotgun. Jax was 3 months old. We were in the nursery on the glider. And I knew that day he was going to take his life at some point. There was no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind. I just didn't know how or when or what the fuck I was going to do because I wasn't going to live. I wasn't back to work yet, but I was getting damn close. I'm like, what do I do? I can't send my baby to daycare. He's the baby that they will shake or throw out a window. Like, I promise he will. I want to do that some days, but I wouldn't, right? Like, it's really, really hard. And he was so sweet. But the only other person that could even hold him and get him to sort of fucking stop or that could handle his cries was my mom, and she lived 2 hours away. So one of the things we always fought about was daycare. And I'm like, no, 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 and no, not going to happen. So my mom had been laid off from one job, and rather than go back to a different place, I said, I need you to nanny. You're just going to have to come live here like 4 or 5 days a week. Just go back to dad's on the weekends. I have to go back to work. I think I got 4.5 months off. Somehow I finagled extra time. I don't know what I said. But we started to pay my mom. She would stay. I think she would come Monday and go home like Thursday night usually, because I could take like an office day or sort of take an office day. And I could go work for a couple hours, or I would stop and pump, or I could run back home and like feed him for a little bit. I had a little bit of milk, or I had the milk that I brought from someone else. And this went on for a couple months, and Sean was just so pissed. He was so infuriated that my mom was there helping. He did not want her there. It was making it really bad. Remember, he was trying to drive this wedge between me and my family earlier on before we ever got pregnant, and I saw that. Um, and by 6 months, when Jax was 6 months old, I filed papers for divorce. I also remember being on a walk with my mom, and I asked her permission, basically, like, would you guys still love me if I don't want to be married to him? Like, I don't think I can do this. They were like, oh my God, we thought you were happy. And she's like, no, of course. So they were like super all into it, to the point where they kind of pushed me to do it before I was ready. So at 6 months, I filed papers, and I had spoken to an astrologer. I'd spoken to an astrologer about this. and my friend Nikki was with us. We had this lady come to my mom's house, and we had a bunch of women come over. And I've had a reading from her like 4 or 5 times in my life, and she's always fucking spot on. And she'd said, like, no, you're not going to be with him, but if you do it before X time, X date, you'll take him back. It's like she's like, you need to hold on. And I couldn't hold on. My dad was like, he's out of town. You need to go get these papers filed, blah, blah, blah. And he really kind of pushed me before I was ready. It's okay. So I filed at 6 months. I told him he needed to get the fuck out of the house. So I did. I made him go get an apartment. So we got an apartment downtown Buffalo. We signed a year's lease, and I was like, that's a little bit. So now, like, our money is going toward paying for our house, and our money is going to pay for his fucking apartment. Whatever. I felt safe a little bit. So what does that motherfucker do? He starts like trying to tell me about his dating life, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, go find a fucking girlfriend. Please, if you find a girlfriend and you go be happy, you will leave us the fuck alone. So then he starts, I want him 50%. Again, this is the baby that would not stop screaming unless he was on my boob or unless he was in my mom's arms. That man couldn't handle him. Tried to, make me seem like an unfit mom because I had asked for someone else's breast milk to give my child. She was a nurse. Um, all of these things, right? Just all of these things. Like suddenly I'm living in this world that feels so fucking unsafe to me because someone is actively trying to take my child away from me who has had zero part other than impregnating me in being around when we were pregnant, in being around other than when he was passed out drunk all the time in the first 6 months of Jax's life. And now he wants him 50% of the time. Fuck off. That's how I felt. There are plenty of dads who are involved, and that might have been an okay scenario. But in our world, that would have been excruciatingly dangerous for my son. And I was going to lose it. And again, I have this child who has no ability to regulate his nervous system. Like he fucking came out that way, just so ridden with anxiety. And then there's me also like that. And I couldn't take it. So at Christmas of that year, when Jax was about a year old, I took Sean back. I was like, you know what? It is so much easier and so much better if I can just monitor the situation. I can just watch it because then he'll come here and he'll stay with Jax. And I don't have to worry about him leaving him with a stranger because he'll be with me, but he'll know I'm not off doing something else. So I'll just take him back and I'll just fucking live with it. And so he kept his apartment, through that year's lease. And then when he was back in the house full time, it was bad. The sexual shit didn't stop. I absolutely hated it. He was still drinking a lot. I was getting ready to get promoted. My mom was still living with us. Again, from the time Jax was 3 months old until he had to been like a year and a half. She's still living with us. At 2 years, she's still living with us. And when I say living with us, from like Monday to Thursday, or she'd come Sunday to Thursday, or, Monday to Friday, something like that. And then my dad would just take care of the house at home by himself on the weekends in Ohio. And she'd go home to him on the weekends and, because I was 2 hours away. So she stayed in the guest room. I was in my room, and Sean was pretty much passed out in the basement most of the time when he wasn't at work. His drinking was out of control. What I didn't recognize was this underlying mental health problem. I didn't understand and realize that he was fucking bipolar, for sure, but with some really, really aggressive agitation and anger issues. So I'm getting ready to get promoted. I got a new phone. Jax was 2. So his birthday's right a week before Christmas. So Jax turns 2. It's Christmas. I get a new phone. By the end of January, it's obvious that I have an opportunity to get promoted. I had been working with my regional director. There was a position that might possibly come open. He had been working with me, kind of grooming me. I had been doing the campaigning thing, right? So if you work in corporate America, if you've ever been in the pharmaceutical industry, before you can go be promoted, like people need to know who you are and about you. So like once like the candidates come into play, the interview is really a formality. So you need to basically campaign and go get everybody's kind of buy-in. And this regional manager was getting ready to kind of shift some things around so that I could take this role because this manager didn't really, the guy I was going to replace, like he was better off in like an individual role anyway. And this was going to be a really good opportunity for me to get moved up. I would have been the corporate DM, so much visibility, great for my career path and closer to family. So I am doing my campaigning. I'm really good at it, right? And so interviews were set for some time in April, and things were just bad at home. I had agreed to go to counseling. I was like, I'll go. I don't care. Whatever, I'll go. My whole thing was, and I was kind of plotting in my phone, like in my notes, like once I get promoted and we move, because we'd have to move to Pittsburgh, once we do that, then I'm going to divorce him. I'm going to move my family out of state. We'll be closer to my parents. We'll be closer to his family because his brother and sister-in-law are there and they seem to have a pretty decent normal life. So they could be useful and helpful. He can find a new job. I'll have my manager job, right? Have all this prepared and ready to go. And we go, and he's like, we need to go to marriage counseling. I'm like, fuck it, whatever. Like, if you think you're going to change some shit, great. But I'm not changing anything. I know who I am. I'm love who I am. I'm happy with who I am. You're the fucking paranoid one. So I'll go sit there. If you want to tell her you're going to work on some shit, I'll sit there and I'll tell her how you treat me. That's fine. That was kind of my attitude. So we go to two sessions. And by the second session, she's like, I don't know what you guys are doing here. If like one of you is going to work on this and the other is not. I'm like, I'm not. I have nothing to change. I have zero to change. I am not mean to him. I am not accusatory of him. All I want is to have some freedom and be left alone. I have not done anything wrong. He's got fucking issues. And he was very calm that day. And that was like a Friday. And then I was leaving to go take Jax to Ohio for Easter. And Sean was going to meet us there. After I left or was there, he said he's not going to come. He'll see me Monday when I come home. Okay. Make an appointment with a counselor for Tuesday. Go there. He has someone show up and serve me divorce papers. Come to find out. So you remember when I said that I had, hold on, I got to clear my throat. You remember when I said that I had that phone, I had upgraded my phone. Well, I didn't trade one in. I just got another phone. What I didn't know, and I found this out a week or two later, I'm like, I go to ping my, where's my iPhone? I'm looking for that phone for some reason. And I go to ping it and it starts dinging from downstairs. Now, this phone shouldn't have pinged. I think I was looking for my current phone. Phone shouldn't be dinging. I hear that noise. I'm like, what is that noise? He comes running from the back of the house, down the hallway to the living room, downstairs, and I go to chase him. And he pulls out my other phone from the rafters that he had gotten, and which my phones stayed cloned because of Apple and like just having your ID signed in. My phones stayed cloned. I did not know he had that. He saw my whole plan in my notes of how I was going to interview. We were going to move, and then I was going to divorce him. This man spent our entire marriage violating me, my body, my thoughts, everything. And the way that he ran and the way that he looked at me and the way he grabbed that phone and the way he grabbed me to get me out of the way to ensure that I didn't touch that phone, I knew he was dangerous. And now he'd already filed divorce papers because I was like, I wonder why he would beat me to file because I hadn't done it again yet. I filed the first time, he filed the second time. Remember, first time Jax was 6 months old. So the gloves were off. This was going to be bad. My mom wasn't there that week or when she came in a couple days, whatever. He kicked her out of the guest room. Now remember, he'd been passed out downstairs in the basement. Basement was finished. It was nice. um, for months, months. Kicked her out of the guest room where she would sleep. So it was me and my mom sharing my king size bed in my room. Thank God we had a bathroom right there in our master bedroom. Excuse me, small, small room. And my 2.5-year-old because he didn't sleep. He would sleep in bed with us. We had guardrails on the bed at one point. I mean, my poor child has fallen out of bed so many times because, again, he was sleeping with me as he was an infant. Um, and he was such a mover. He still does not sit still in his sleep because sometimes he'll sleep with me and also, or I'll just go sleep with him, right? But he wouldn't, the only way for us to have our sanity was like he would fall asleep on me with the boob or next to me. And then all of a sudden I'd hear this thud and like he scooted all the way across the, I mean, I'm talking like the kid was 3 months old. Poor thing. There is so much humor in it. We laugh so hard about it now. And I know that is not ideal, but I'm like, seriously, we make babies so that they're really not breakable because this shit happens. But I have a 2.5-year-old now and he's sleeping in the bed between me and my mom. Like we're grown adults and like she's got her bags on the floor. There's no room in the chest and the drawers and the closet and everything. And he's over there like he took her room. She had to sleep there because that was our child care. Again, still didn't try. And at this point, going through a divorce, I'm not giving him to daycare. I'm not changing up our routine. I leave to go to a meeting. He goes before I went, my bag, like I was packing. He goes to my bag and pulls out underwear that he felt were too sexy and starts accusing me of what are you doing? What are you doing? So now, like game on, I have to go get a new attorney. I go to a meeting, come back, or no, I'm getting ready to interview. I'm still going forward with the interview. I have no idea how this is going to work. I called my boss, the regional director, and I was like, here's the deal. Like interviews are next week. My ex-husband just filed papers. There's no chance in hell I'm going to be able to move. And he's like, well, can you still do the job from where you live? And I was like, yeah, I can travel. He's like, well, if you can convince people that you can still travel and do the job, fine. I'm like, okay. So again, I had grown really close to him, my boss, over these months while he was helping develop me professionally, teaching me how to network. And interestingly enough, when I was the number one rep in the country, he was the number one DM in the country. And God, I've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes and I still have so much to share. So I'm trying to remember exactly how this happened. Let's check my notes. Anyway, so interviews happen. I go through the interview process. I get the job. Like I blew everyone away. I had 17 interviews in one day, PS. Or I interviewed with 17 people. I shouldn't say 17 in one day. I blew them. I was so excited. So, so excited. Like, yes, like I have, my home life sucks, but like I define myself, my worth was defined by my career accomplishments. Yes, I'm getting promoted. Like, yes, I've always wanted to do this. I've been waiting so long to get back into leadership since when I left the jewelry store, when I left because of the rape. No, I shouldn't say that. I really left because I wanted a different career path later in life. I wanted more. So I just had to leave at that point because of the rape. Um, I start traveling for work. I go to my first meeting and like I said, we had become close and I'm at my first meeting and things happen. I end up hooking up with my boss. And I come home and I'm all like excited about it. And obviously, because we'd had this like really, really deep connection. Now, mind you, divorce papers have already been filed. So there's no cheating, particularly in my mind, because divorce papers have been filed. And P.S., there's no chance in fuck, I'm spending my life with this man. Like, whatever it takes to get divorced and away from him is going to happen, period. Like, I might not have had a lot of self-esteem growing up, but I knew like that was not my life. Like, fuck no. And so I'm like, I'm shell shocked like that this happened, like that we hooked up, and I'm kind of like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, this is my past, really bad decision. Like in the grand scheme of things, but yet like it's not a bad decision because God, he's such a good dude. And oh, P.S. He's not divorced yet. And I say yet because I knew that there had been stuff going on. Like we'd become such good friends. And I'm sharing that, right? Because I know that there's other women here who've probably been on the other end of our actions. And so I'm sorry. Um, but like in my marriage, it takes two to get to a point. And I'm not going to share the things that went on in his marriage because that's the part of the story that is his journey that involves really someone else who doesn't have an opportunity to voice her side here. And I'm just going to leave it at that. So I come home and, you know, we had Sean wasn't supposed to be at the house. He was staying at friends like when he wasn't going to be there. And I come in and I'm telling my friend about this. My neighbor was a close friend, and my neighbors couldn't stand him. And none of the neighbors in the area liked him because it was just obvious that he was so weird and there was something off with him. And so I'm like telling her like all this juiciness because like it happens and you're like, I don't even know what the fuck to do with this. Like, I don't know how to unpack this. Like, you're kind of on cloud nine, but then you're like, did I just fuck up everything in my career? Did I just do this? Did I just fuck this up? And we're having like this girl talk, right? We're having a glass of wine and girl talk, talking the way girls talk. And he comes running in the front door. Now, mind you, he's supposed to be staying at a friend's house, comes running in the door and grabs this recording device from the wall art thing behind me. He'd been recording me in my own home. Now recording a conversation that could really do damage to another individual. And it wasn't meant for his ears at all. He wasn't supposed to be in the house at all. You're not allowed to legally record someone without their knowledge in New York State at all. And I go kind of running after him to grab it. And we ended up in the back guest room, and he had slammed me down on the bed. And because I had the thing in my hand, he was holding my hand behind my back. And I looked in his eyes and I was like, that motherfucker would kill me if he had the chance. Jesus Christ. So I called the cops. Nothing necessarily happened with the cops that night. Um, Claire, I married my boss. Yeah, well, I mean, I did. I married my boss. P.S. We've been married now for shit. When did we get married? In 21, so 3.5 years. Yeah. It's long story long, it all worked out. But at that time, like, you don't know how it's gonna work out. I'm fresh in the middle of a divorce with a fucking madman who has been secretly recording me and spying on me for years. Like, this is the world I lived in. um, so that's night one of the cops being at my house. I had the police at my house in a 6-week span 5 times because he was so fucking volatile. I didn't live in a world where at any point in time the cops ever had to show up at my house for a dispute. Not growing up, not in a neighborhood, not in my circles of people that I knew, none. And yet here I am with a 2.5-year-old going through a divorce, just about to be at the height of my career at that point in time. 5 times the cops are at my house in a 6-week period. That's just a peek into how disgusting our divorce battle was. I did get the job. Obviously I told you I got promoted. We continued to work. One day, I get hauled into HR and I get grilled about my relationship with my boss. My ex-husband sent that tape in, called HR to try to get us fired. This man hated me more than he loved his son. That is the sad truth that really sucks for me to have to share with Jax one day. And again, I don't have to share that with him. When he's an adult and has his own family, those are things that he'll learn and he'll be able to understand. But he truly did hate me more than he hated his own son. Taking away my livelihood, taking away someone else's livelihood is not the answer. When you say hurt people, broken people fucking hurt people. That man had no moral compass. And that was one of the number one things that I always said. Like, I cannot be married to somebody whose moral compass points in a different direction. Turns out he didn't fucking have one. He did not have one. Rage and venom and anger and revenge were the only things that flowed through that man's blood. And then you don't know how many times I've said, I would never have had a baby. I would never have brought a child into this world if I had any idea that this is the situation we were going to be in, that this is the human, this is the monster that was his father. So there was a lot of guilt there. There was a lot of guilt there. So we both got taken out of our positions. I was no longer a manager. I was put back into a rep job with a boss who absolutely despised me. It was terrible. I was in the divorce battle of my life. We weren't fighting over money. We didn't fight about money. We were fighting over custody. I was trying to preserve, and like I knew I'd have to give up 50% of the time. I was trying to work out a schedule. I was trying to work out, could it be graduated? Can I just have him now? Like, so now Jax is 3.5, right? And I had already moved out of that home. We had sold that home. I'd bought my dream home. So when we got demoted, like it was down the line, it was like another year later. And I'd already been living in, my dream home. I didn't lose any money, thank God, but I lost the role that I loved. I had to take on a job that I absolutely despise. You don't go backwards in your jobs. Like it's terrible. Um, but he lost his too. My boss had to take a role that he did not love. And so, yes, your actions have consequences, your choices have consequences, right? Right. And they can't say like, I do believe what goes around comes around. Karma happens, but this was not necessarily karma. This was truly another person working their hardest to try and destroy your life and someone else's life, intentionally deciding to try and cause and inflict pain. So get through that. I'm dealing with this. CPS comes knocking at my door. Now I have CPS in my new home in this neighborhood that, trust me, this is like the quintessential suburban neighborhood. Nobody wanted to talk to me. I was the divorced single mom. All the women were afraid, their husbands might catch divorce. And all I kept thinking is, if I've lost my career and he's lost his career, are we going to make it through this? Because we were madly in love. We were. We were madly in love. And I also knew, like, if this man was going to be with me, he would have loved, he had to love me. Because if I cost him his career and he still wanted to be with me, I might have actually experienced real, true, unconditional love for the first time in my life. I think that's why I tell you the story, because our foundation, our love is so pure and is so strong. And the things that we've been through, that we've gone through to be together, to stay together. So I deal with CPS coming to my house. Finally, it was about a month or two before my divorce was final in 2016. It's just sitting in the court system, right? No, we're not fighting over money. This is just a custody thing. He wanted to take it to trial. We had a mediation where both sides sat down and we all saw my ex-husband and he didn't look good. Something shifted. You looked at him and you're like, he says he's being healthy, but I was looking at him going, is he doing meth? Like he cut his hair real short, didn't look good. I'm instantly like, is he involved in like some weird drug thing? Meth obviously came to mind. And what he said was he was involved in one of the health companies and like their health program system, when his friends were too. But you just get to that point where someone gets so thin, you start questioning things. And he didn't act good. He didn't seem mentally good. Like before, like I knew he was batshit crazy, but even my attorney was like, he doesn't look good, Danielle. I'm like, I know, told you. So divorce is final. He's dating some girl It's the next year. It's 2018. So now we're, a year and a half later. He's been with this girl for a while. Jax would come home. He had him half the time and I had him half the time. So half the time I was mom, half the time I was no kids, boyfriend living 8 hours from me. So I was completely on my own, like alone. That sucked. Long distance relationship. He has kids in Maryland. I have kids. I have a son in New York. Nobody's leaving their children. We're looking at, I'm looking at 6 years before um, I see a place where we could be together, meaning like his son youngest would be graduated, and then he would have the opportunity to leave the state if he wanted. But I couldn't leave New York State. I couldn't leave the county. And you know, Jax was telling me that Sean and daddy's going to marry Kristen, like this girlfriend. And I was like, daddy and Kristen just each bought separate house. Like, that's what I'm thinking. I didn't say it to Jax. He's 5 at that time. Like, daddy and Kristen just bought separate homes, right? Like, daddy moved out of a condo and purchased a home. Jax just told me daddy helped Kristen move into her new purchased home. People who buy two separate homes do not get married. So I started kind of getting nervous, going, ugh, he's in a different car now. Like, this guy was so unsettled. He would not pull in my driveway to pick Jax up. He would park across the street, stand outside his car in front of the neighbor's house. And my neighbors were like, what the fuck is wrong with him? And then they would watch like Jax scream and cry not to go with him. And again, I didn't realize like this is a typical little boy thing. Like they do, they cry for their mamas and then they're probably fine in the car 5 minutes later or less. But it killed my heart. It broke my heart. I had such a dysregulated nervous system myself that even on the weeks that Jax was back with me, I was so not present. I was miserable in my job. I was lonely. Like how long am I going to put up with like being a side piece and living like this? Knowing like someday, yeah, sure, he wants a divorce, but he's not gonna like it's not happening yet, and I'm not gonna live my whole life like this, right? I told him I was 20, I'm not gonna say the year. I told him, I said, I've decided if you're not gonna leave, I'm done. Like I'm just done. Like I'm just not gonna. So I did. I walked away. Um, I walked away, and within 3 months, he left. And within 6 months, he had expedited all of their divorce papers and everything. So he was clean and done, divorced in less than 6 months. So from the time I walked away from him, I think it was 7 months before he was free and clear, clean. Actually, no. Yeah, 6 months. Fastest divorce I've ever seen and experienced happen. Just to show me like this is real, like we're going to do this. Still don't know how we're going to live. Well, just a couple months later, I'll take you back to Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018. And was supposed to, well, I took Jax from school to a dentist appointment. Sean was supposed to meet us at the dentist office. He didn't meet us at the dentist office, whatever, fine. He usually did, but okay, not a big deal. Go home, make Jack some fish sticks, walk in the door, and I look at my phone. It must have been on vibrate, silent, and I have a voice, or I have a message, and it's from the Amherst police. And they call wanting to know if I have any idea where Sean is. And I'm like, I call back and I'm like, listen, I'm his ex-wife. Jack, our son's with me. We don't speak. We don't interact. He was supposed to be at the dentist today, but I don't know, he's probably out of town for work for something. No, not a big deal. He wouldn't tell me if he's not going to be there. He's not going to tell me if he's going to be there. I don't have access to his whereabouts. Good luck. And something just sat with me, right? So I'm looking over at Jack's eating his little fishy sticks. He's not quite 6 years old. And it's just not sitting with me. It's not sitting right with me at all. A couple hours go by and I call back and I was like, do you have some more information? I think the detective who called said that they saw his car somewhere, and I don't remember what he said on the phone. Could you have him give me a call? So they did. They had the detective call me back and was like, what did you say about the situation? And He said, well, we found his car in a restaurant bar parking lot. I'm like, that's weird. I said, here's what I do know about us and his life. He's a medical sales rep. He drives a company vehicle. He can have his parking paid for if he takes a trip to where he goes to the airport and flies somewhere. So he would drive there and leave his car in airport parking because he can expense that. I don't think there's any significant reason why. There's no good reason. How long have you said the car has been there? It's been there since Friday. I'm like, this is Tuesday. He said, yeah, we got a report from somebody that works at the restaurant that Saturday the car was still there and they saw him there at the rest or the bar on Friday. And I'm like, that's not good. I said, that's not good. I said, I know that things have been going downhill. I had found out that he had lost his job. I had done some digging on the internet when I saw the different car. I had to do a lot of research to figure out like why he had to buy his own car. He had lost a job shortly after he bought this house. I knew he and his girlfriend had broken up. So I start making phone calls because I'm like, this is fishy, right? So I start calling friends. Now his friends hate me. His friends, some of his friends received some of the images, pictures, maybe video, but I at least know pictures of me when he was doing his sexual exploitation. And I know this because one of his friends accidentally texted it back to me one day after we were divorced. Obviously, must have been planning to text someone else. That didn't feel good. That wasn't the friend I called, but there were other friends around town that I said, listen, I know that I'm the last person you want to hear from. And I don't really care where the guy is, but the situation is fishy and I think there's something wrong. So can you tell me when the last time was you saw him? They didn't want to tell me any information. Because again, the message they got from Sean was I had cheated on him, which was fucking bullshit. Fucking bullshit. I never cheated on him ever. I prayed to God he would cheat his ass on me. Really did, like, so that I could just be free of his paranoia and his possessiveness, right? But they thought he lied so much, like, he didn't even know what the truth was anymore. Such a maniacal liar. He told them I was trying to take his baby for his child from him. No, I was fine with him having a relationship with his child, but not when he's piss fucking drunk, not when he's leaving a box cutter knife in the couch cushions where the 2-year-old's toys were scattered all over and Jax was playing, where the knife edge, the blade was still partly sticking out. So yeah, did I want some restrictions? Fuck, of course I did. Anyway, so I had to call these people because again, I knew like there was something wrong. And here's me, like just I got to do the right thing. I got to do the right thing. And I got to see if I can figure out what's going on because for whatever reason, even though I'm the ex-wife, I'm still getting the phone call and nobody else. Found out the girlfriend's name, called her. Felt bad for her. I'm like, hi, I know you guys just broke up. I'm sorry. This is really weird and awkward, but you know when last time was that you talked to him? She's like, yeah, I talked to him Friday. I'm like, okay. Did y'all fighting? She's like, yeah, it wasn't good. Like, okay, thank you. If you think of anything, call the police. She's like, all right. So call a couple other friends. And again, they refused. Like one would talk to me, the other one refused. I said, then call the fucking police if you're gonna be such a dick. Um, and I kept replaying things. So I would call the cops, I would call the police station back and I'm like, here's what I know, here's what I know, here's what I know. And I was like, when Jax was 3 months old, I was convinced he was going to kill himself. And I said, the guy drinks a lot. He has looked really, really weird. I've been concerned, like maybe he's involved in drugs or money. Like I've been wondering if he's been doing meth. Like I think you need to go knock on his door. You need to bang on his door because I'm guessing you're going to find him passed out in a chair, having drank too much and taken pills. Like that is what I feel you're going to find. You need to go in there or somebody will have fucked him up and killed him in his house. I was like, but I think he took his own life. And he's like, well, we just can't just go there. Well, long story long, I'll take you back to the beginning of the story where I'm laying on my driveway in the cold night. It's probably 40 degrees at that point. And so I said, where? And they said, at his house. And I said, okay. How? And they said, can we go inside? I'm like, yeah, sorry. So I walked them in through the garage and I said, we come in this way. I said, I have dogs and I don't want them to wake up my son. And so I bring the two officers in and I'm like, can I get you a cup of coffee, a vodka, anything? Literally, I offered the officers vodka because I'm like, I need one. And I was like, so how? It's like, was he passed out? Was there whiskey? Was there beer cans? They said no, he was hanging. I did a lot of research. Actually, I didn't do this part. Ken did this part because at this point, Ken and I were formally and officially together and he was divorced and he was regularly coming to visit and he had been in Jax's life and had been around Jax for a long time. And obviously my mom had been on the phone with me when the cops came and she heard the whole thing and she's like, I got it, we're gonna pack a bag, we'll be there in a couple hours. So they left in the middle of the night and drove up. And Ken was at a work meeting and I was like, I need you now. So he had to fly home. He had to finish his work meeting, fly home, and then he drove up to Buffalo. It took him about a day and a half, but he knew my parents were there. Um, so he had done some research and there's a lot of psychology and there's a lot of that goes into why people choose their method of completion on their own, like why they choose the individual method. And he didn't want to be a burden to anybody. He did it by himself. Not a ton to clean up, but there's an isolation piece to it. There's a worthlessness piece to it that I don't want to burden anybody. I called his sister and brother-in-law, who I knew that he had been estranged from. I knew he hadn't talked with them in a while. This was one of their more out times. And I said, have you seen Sean? Because the police are looking for him. Nobody knows where he is and that his car has been found somewhere. I made all the uncomfortable conversations in the hopes that maybe he was somewhere, whatever. I was the only one looking for that motherfucker all night, besides the cops. And it turns out that there was a friend of his whose wife worked for the county sheriff's office. And someone drove by and saw that the lights were on in his house. And so she said, you need to go and do a well visit. And they realized it was the same person whose car that they had been looking for. So then they went in and they were able to not, to bang down the door or whatever. This was, so I said, when? And again, he had last texted, I had his work phone, and the last texts out on his work phone were Friday night, and the car was left there Friday and found, Saturday morning it was still at the bar. So he had Ubered home because I'm like, he doesn't ever Uber. It must have been really bad for him to Uber. He drives drunk all the time. And I found out that the night he took his own life was the same day I had been fired from my job. So you remember I was working that shitty ass job because he got me demoted. Yes, because I was having an affair with my boss, but it's like nobody at work knew. The reason they knew was because of him. He intentionally did that, right? So I was working in a shitty role that I absolutely loathed and hated. And God, of course, I was taking liberties and not working as much as I should. Like, I was trying to find a new job, but I liked that company. And so after the police left that night, before my parents had gotten there and I had my vodka, I put the timeline together because Ken had actually been with me that weekend. He was at the house when I came home and took the call that I had just been let go. And I stood at my counter. I stood over above the sink and I remember looking up and I'm like, okay, I have prayed for this influence to be removed from my son's life. You know, I did not ask for this particular method. I am grateful that I will not have to counterbalance all of the hatred and the mental anguish that this man will cause in Jack's life growing up. But I'll make him a martyr so that Jax doesn't feel alone. He doesn't feel left. And I get that I haven't been doing enough with my life. Apparently, there's something more I'm supposed to be doing. And I'll do that. I will create something beautiful and special so that Jax will be proud of me and Jax will see it and he will have an attachment to whatever this thing is that needs to be created. Because there will come a day in his life when I have to tell him how his father left this earth and that his father chose to leave him. And I don't want him to associate with that. I want to create something beautiful for Jax to see you can turn something tragic and dark into beauty. And that's really where It Didn't Crush Me Fully was born. I mean, I'm at an hour, I'm almost 2 hours into my story, and I don't want to continue to bore y'all with this. It's kind of like, am I pouring? This is what the pour out toward the book is going to be. Um, I had to help find the will. The brother hightailed it up from Ohio. The brother who had been estranged went through the house, took some pictures and things. I wasn't allowed to go in. I was the ex. Made some calls, found some things, knowing who to call, right? Because again, I was involved. I had been married to him. Never changed his will. So my dad was the actual executor of the will. So who cleaned out his house but us? I had to go through his things. I was adamant about wanting to go see the body. I was so adamant about going to see the body. And both Ken and my dad said, no, you can't do it. They didn't find him for 4 days. You can't go see the body. You will not be able to unsee that. So I didn't. I really wanted to. I was like, I feel like I need to. Like, I feel like being the only one who was actually looking for him and searching for him. And I was married to the motherfucker for longer than I should have been. But I was still going to honor this soul, this person in death, even though he fucking tormented me every waking second of his life. And I reached out to his girlfriend and I said, this is probably got to sound so awkward, his ex-girlfriend. And I said, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, but I need you to know that knowing all the things that he did to me, I can imagine what he did to you. And I don't want you to harbor any guilt or hold any shame or responsibility for his decision. His decision was his decision. He was long sick before you. And I said, and again, I don't know what your relationship was like. I just know that you had broken up. And I know he had texted you that night, and I can't imagine what he said. And I'm sorry for what he may have put you through. And I did. I spent some time in the coming months, right? Like searching, scouring pictures, like, was there meth involved? because he just looked so, he looked like his passport photo looked like a serial killer at that point. Easily like the thing you like the picture you would see like on one of these Netflix documentaries. I'm like, this is the guy my son called dad. And like in the last 4 6 months of his life, like this is the guy that my son had to go live and visit with. And everybody kept telling me like what a great dad he was, what a great dad he was. And I'm like, what? I hope you're right. I hope that in those minutes that my son spent with him, those weekends, those days that he spent with him, I hope that he was a really great dad because he was a really shitty fucking human. And it was shortly before that that I had met my fairy godmother. I'd met this woman in the dentist chair. She was my hygienist, not my typical hygienist. And we were talking, and you know how like they always like to talk to you with your mouth wide open, and you can't talk. You cannot have a fucking conversation at the dentist office yet, but they always ask questions. I'm like, why are you doing this to me? Um, she knew I was having a hard time with Jax. She just knew about him, and I'd never met this woman before. She'd never known me. It's not like she knew of me through Sean or anything. And this was a couple months before he died. And I was like, she did the things that she knew about him and her perspective. I knew like she was like this gifted, intuitive woman, and she works with energy and she works with like she's a light worker and she has some other abilities. So I went to lunch with her and I was like, oh my gosh, like you are so gifted. Like I just needed to be in your presence. So I stayed in contact with her and like become kind of friends with her. And she came over to the house and she was like, I can, she's like, he just wanted you to know he couldn't stay. He needed you to know he could not stay. There was just this dark, dark energy, and he couldn't complete his contract. Um, and I will say he has always been my biggest teacher. I have learned so much love and compassion. I have learned forgiveness of myself for allowing myself to be in that relationship. I have learned acceptance of understanding and accepting that no matter what, on his days where he begged me not to go before it got really, really bad, I was able to accept that no matter what he gave, even if he gave me all of him, all of his best was never going to be good enough for me. And I also learned to accept that about myself. But he's taught me a lot in death and in life. And so I do try to honor that motherfucker because that's exactly how I refer to him, that motherfucker. Um, and I try to honor him not just because he's my son's father, but because he is a soul who I agreed to experience something with in this life. And oh, did I. Because without him, without all that shit, I wouldn't have the foundation to be able to blend this family from a really, really difficult beginning. Obviously. I mean, I think the kids now, we are 5 years in of being blended, but at least six or more. 5 years since I was able to begin being around them, six or more. I don't have to do the math from when they've been divorced. And I think just recently I went from the whore to the woman. And I laugh. I laugh. I'm like, okay, I gotta find some humor in that, right? Like I do. I wish her so much peace. I truly do. I wish her so much peace and happiness. And I like, for me, divorce was the best thing ever because it gave me the opportunity to recreate and decide what kind of life I really wanted, and only go get that and never settle for anything different. And I think that gives a lot of us an opportunity, right? Change traumas. They give us the opportunity to decide how we want to create our lives. And some of us go out and we do it, and some of us don't. And I think the part where we don't, those who don't, is really sad. Like you have this one human experience right now. Who knows how long before your soul comes back? That's what I believe. It's going to come back a lot. But who knows how long? Like you came here to do some things, so fucking do them. Don't let that shame and that fear because you've been a part of something big. Life is a contact sport. We're meant to be emotional. We're meant to get dirty. So like think about all that trauma that I've been. And so one of the things that I do, and I'll be honest, that I do still harbor a lot of guilt about because I have not been able to turn the page yet to shift this dynamic is everything in Jax's life since he's been born, I have been under a massive, massive amount of stress from Sean's constant torment to trying to get us, to get through the divorce, to try to get into a home where we were safe, where my mom and I didn't have to, and I didn't say like we lived behind a locked bedroom door with a deadbolt on our bedroom door because he would constantly go in and rummage through drawers and pull shit out of drawers and turn the bedroom upside down. Locked deadbolt on the bedroom door. And then when we moved into our new house, I had security cameras up everywhere. I saw him doing drive-bys sometimes. Then not knowing if he was involved in drugs because he looked like a meth addict. And then the suicide, which was just around Halloween. And let me tell you, that house was so fucking creepy. Like there are cute Halloween decorations and then there are creepy ones. And he had all the creepy shit in there. And I'm like, God damn. And so then we go into blending and you're really excited because you've been through hell and back to try to blend this family and you have all these hopes and these dreams. But yet those poor kids, they were going through stuff from having their parents. And honestly, it's interesting. They were not as affected as teenagers as I think that they'll probably, they're going to have this experience on their heart later in life. Um, we actually have a really good relationship now. And I was going to get into a lot of the blending stuff, but we're already 2 hours in and I'm not going to go there right there. I think a lot of that will come through in my workshop tomorrow. But to have all of this betrayal in life, to have someone rip your career from you and be forced to go figure it out on your own, to learn to trust again was really, really hard. My husband opened my heart up so hard, but let me tell you, once we started to blend, it closed back down. It did. 72% of second marriages end in divorce because that's how hard it is. It is the hardest thing. It is the biggest disappointment you're ever going to go through. So if you're in one of those situations where you're trying to blend with kids, you're going to go like so optimistically, right? Like you're going to think that you've got this great basis in this foundation. You have all these hopes and these dreams. But then when you add in the kids, the dynamics with the kids and their needs and wants and their reactions, and you have all of these different people that you've thrown into a blender, that is hard. And all of that hard is also occurring in your home safe space. And it takes a lot of work to get through. And this was the summer, if you think about the timeline, this was the summer that I begun to crack my heart wide the fuck open. We started blending in 2019, all living under the same roof. It's 2024. The first time I was like willing and ready to start to crack my heart wide the fuck open because it had been through so much. And you just close down, right? You close down, like you create this wall, this cage like around you and these walls around you. And as much as I didn't carry a lot of guilt, harbor, and shame, the kids looked at me for a long time in a way that was not the way you want your bonus kids to look at you. And understandable. Totally get it. They were also witness to their parents not having a great marriage either. I mean, but it doesn't make it any easier. And their teenage years, I mean, they're going through stuff. And we're so much better now, 5 years in. Like it's really, really worth it, but it's really hard. And so had we not had this really strong foundation of faith, communication, and passion, like those, we have values that we've based our relationship on. And I mean, yeah, what we've been through, faith, communication, and passion, like that's where our foundation is. We can always go back to that. But I'm going to leave it there because at 2 hours, we haven't even gotten to the blending stuff. And maybe that'll be a workshop for later, just some other conversation, right, that we have. That was a life of betrayal. a lot of betrayal. And now, I'm in the second period of my life as a 6-2 many gen. That sixth line goes through the second period where you're gathering a lot of information, right? And I've had to completely transform my career. While we were blending, I told you there was a moment where I was canceled. I'll probably share more. I'll tie the more of this into tomorrow's healing workshop prior to the group heart healing session. But I was canceled. And so as you're trying to open up your heart and trying to blend this family, and then you get canceled, and someone has this vendetta to take your career away. Again, so, so strange. So, so strange. Other than I wasn't meant to be there, right? When you don't listen to the whispers of the universe and you don't go out and do your own thing, you don't go do that on your own. And the universe is like, hey, I gave you a soft push before, but you know what? Now I'm just going to whack you over the head really hard and I'm going to cancel you. Can you go make it on your own? Mm. So that is the beginning of the It Didn't Crush Me story. That's the bulk of it, the bulk of the front half. If you stayed, God love you. That was a lot. Thank you for being here. Thank you for receiving this story with the delicacy that it kind of needs, right? But again, I told you I share this so that women do not hold on to that shame or that guilt because we all learn something through it. We all find ourselves in it. I'm here to hold the light. As that 64th gene key of illumination, I'm here to illuminate that for you. So if you can't see it in yourself, I see it in you, that you can get through this. Thank you. I would love to hear your comments. I would love all of it, right? That's what it's for. So please share your thoughts with me.